are you yelling for? Alding. Mustangs. Louder now, let's hear it for Alding. Mustangs. Yes, yes, you can see. Many things that you don't know about me is that I was my high school mascot. I was part of the cheer team. And, you know, now that I say it, you can see it, right? You can see me doing this. Now, if you thought I was hyper now, you should have seen me at 17. I was a spitfire. And at the football games, I was always getting into trouble. I'd offend the other coaches. The band director, says I shouldn't be mocking the band during the performance. The high school principal says I shouldn't be doing the centipede during the national anthem. And evidently, parents didn't like it when I pretend to look up the skirts of the drill team during halftime. I mean, gosh, people are so picky. But my cheerleading sponsor, she loved it. She said, Jonathan, you just dance to your own beat, don't you? Don't you? And she said, I love that. I love that. And I really did. I really did. I mean, I was really good at dancing to my own beat. But let me tell you what I'm not good at. Dancing to somebody else's beat. And I really mean that quite literally. Now, I can dance. If you've gone to Sunday Tea or any of our club outreaches, I can tear the floor up. But I'm really, really bad at following someone else's steps. That's why I'm terrible at line dancing. My funky chicken is never funky. My wobble is always wobbly. I'm just not good at that kind of stuff. I mean, I took ballet about 5 years ago. And every week, little 9-year-old Megan would come in with her little pink outfit, and she would show me up every time. She picked it up so quick. But I'm just not good at dancing to someone else's beat. And you can ask Victoria, at the Pride in the Park event that we had, she tried to teach me a simple cheer, and she looked all radiant like she was trying out for the Dallas Cowgirls. She looked beautiful. And then there was me, sloppy, bumbling, spastic circus monkey. Circus. I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess. And there was like 500 people to look and watch. Yeah, thanks. And one thing that I can say about my life is that, whether it's been in my highest of highs or in my lowest of lows, I always did. Now, I danced myself off a cliff or two, but it was my beat. It was my beat. You see, the world is always trying to get us to dance to its beat, the one it says is right. I mean, our entire system, our entire society seems to constantly trying to shape us to be like them, to always be the same. I mean, think about it. Think about all the ways in your life where people are playing their music and expecting you to do their dance. Everyone on TV, they want you to be like them. Support their cause, to share their views, believe like me or get burned by the majority. And all the time at work, right? Anytime that you work, you get a new boss, you gotta dance a new dance. You want to be accepted and appreciated by your coworkers? Well, then you better be on their side, and you better think like they do. You better dance or burn. I mean, I worked for this company, and they wanted me. I remember them. They wanted me to straight up deceive customers on the phone. Lie or be fired. Dance or burn. Those were the choices. I said, see you later. But how many times has that been hung over your head in a relationship? If you want to be with me, then you better change. You better dance the way I say, or else. You do love me, right? So what's it going to be? Dance or burn? How many times do you feel like you are caught in the middle? Hey, take my side. No, take mine. Stand with me. If you want to continue to be on good terms with me, then you better be on the outs with them. Dance or burn. In high school, it's probably the most, worst kinds of things. Either be like me or be bullied. And sometimes when we go to class now, even in college, it's the same way. But what about your family? Well, that's a big one, isn't it? Your family. Are they constantly hounding you to dance their dance? act like us, believe like us. We taught you better than this. We know best. You need to think like we think. Otherwise, you're wrong. Otherwise, you're wrong and you're ostracized and you are a black sheep and you are now on the outside. How often are we made to be the outsider, judged and belittled and condemned with this invitation, burning cold that sneers, oh, you're welcome back inside anytime, but you better be sure and put your dancing shoes on if you want to dance your way back in to my beat. You see, but there are always dancing shoes that just don't quite seem to fit. I mean, how many times do you know religious people or been to a church that says, oh, if you want to be welcome and accepted by me, then you better sing the hymns I teach you. If you want God to love you, then you better believe exactly what we do because you know what? We know best. We're the authority. And if you vary in any single way from what I teach you, then you're out. Because we know God's dance, don't you know? Oh, and by the way, you're doing it wrong. Everyone is always trying to persuade you, in their direction. Sometimes subtly, other times with horrendous force and great, great consequences. You want to keep working here? You better not mention your roommate then. You want to worship and be respected here? Then don't mention that divorce. Or that you're a single mom. Or that you have a gay relative that you accept. No. If that's the dance you want to dance, then you better prepare for the fire because you're going to get burned. What fire are you facing? What situation seems to be hounding you to do something that you're just not sure you want to do? What kind of pressure is bearing down on you saying conform, conform, conform? Do you feel those heavy hands of oppression trying to mold you, grabbing and the squeezing and the hurting? Is there someone in your life right now who's trying to tie strings to you to make you their dancing puppet? What place of decision are you at today? So what's it going to be? Are you going to dance? Or are you going to get burned? Perhaps our scriptures today can help you decide. Last week, if you were here, we left the people of Judah, and who, after being invaded by the Babylonian Empire, are now exiled there. We talked about how they had undergone this great upheaval. I mean, their lives were turned upside down when they were taken into this foreign land, and they were dragged there. And when they got there, they felt unsettled. They felt unsure of what God wanted them to do. But God was clear that day, like we talked about through Jeremiah. He said, put down roots, build homes, plant gardens, marry, have children. That is what God wanted the people to do. And it involved change. It involved change, which the people began to do. And that brings us to the book of Daniel, to a group of Jews who are doing just that. You see, in 606 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar, he decides, he says, you know what, I'm going to select some of these men, these exiled men from Judah to come, and I want them to learn the literature and the language of Babylon in a 3-year training course, to serve in the king's palace. And so among these men that he chose for this was Daniel and his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, all who were young Jewish nobility in exile. And they were chosen because they were really smart and because they were really pretty. That's what the word says. Now, you may not remember those names from the chapter because they could not serve in Babylon and keep a Hebrew name. No. That should have been their first clue. So Daniel is given the name Belteshazzar, and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are given the Babylonian names Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So with those new names, God calls them to assimilate. And that's where we find them in the story today. So the three began to learn the Babylonian ways. They begin to eat what they eat. They learn what they want. They take those schooling classes. They read the scrolls of Babylon. They do all of those things. And as they do, they start to feel that pressure mounting on them. It starts to weigh down on them. You see, King Nebuchadnezzar, he's feeling real good about his position, as they invaded and took over, and as they continue to grow, he's feeling good. And he wants to be sure that everybody knows who he is, that everyone bows down and everyone's going to serve him and his ways, dance to his beat. And so he builds this huge statue. I mean, it's huge. It's 9 stories high. It's made of gold. It's shiny. It's ornate. And it stands in the plain of Dura, which is in present-day Karbala, Iraq. Now, the statue itself, more likely it's either an image of himself or possibly the Babylonian god of wisdom known as Nabu. We just don't know. But what we do know is that once it was built, this big shiny statue, once it was built, the king issues a decree. He said, hey, let it be known, my kingdom, that anytime the sound of a horn or a flute or a lyre or a harp or any kind of music, anytime any kind of music is played, everyone must at once bow and worship my statue. You're going to bow. My music is going to play, so you better dust off your dancing shoes, my little puppets. You are going to dance to my beat, and if you don't, I am going to toss you into a blazing fiery furnace. Oh yeah, if you don't dance, I'm going to cook your goose. It's dance or burn. What's it going to be? Now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who from this point out, I'm just going to call the 3 amigos, because let's face it, that's a mouthful. So the 3 amigos are now faced with a horrendous choice. I mean, clearly, God wants them to settle down into the culture of Babylon. That's what we talked about. But just what should they change? How far should it go? And where should they draw the line in that? And for us, it's a question that we often ask ourselves. Where do you draw the line? Under great pressure, how much and exactly what do you allow yourself to be changed in your life? You see, the 3 amigos find themselves in a pickle. Remembering, Moses in the wilderness, about how angry God was when Aaron made that golden calf and they all began to worship it. They remembered that. But they knew that God is a faithful God, and that clearly He wants the same for them. Whether they are in Israel, Judah, or Babylon, God wants their faithfulness. He wants our faithfulness. So after the music was playing, and after seeing their reluctance, some of the Babylonian astrologers, they go up to King Nebuchadnezzar, little tattletales, and they say, hey, look at those Jews over there. You've welcomed them into your kingdom, and this is how they repay you? Your music played. Your music played, sire. Oh, and they didn't dance. And they sure didn't bow. So, should we go ahead and throw some coals in the furnace, sire? When Nebuchadnezzar hears this, he is furious. He is furious, and he flies into this fit of rage. He says, bring me the 3 amigos. And he brings them, and they get there, and he says, is this true? Is it true? Do you defy me? Do you refuse to serve the gods I serve? Refuse to serve me? Oh, you've made a grave mistake, my little friends. Now, I'm going to summon my royal orchestra, and music, they are going to play, and you are going to dance to my beat. Or else I'm going to cook your goose. Dance or burn, what is it going to be? Gosh, what an impossible choice, right? I mean, it really is a matter of life or death. They are feeling that pressure to say, believe, and do something that goes against, all that they stand for, that goes against everything that they built the foundations of their life on. I mean, how could they betray the very God who gave them life? But on the other hand, how could they choose to die? I mean, they could spare their lives by pretending, to bow down and just by saying the words, but would they? But, should they? In its own way, it's that same predicament we find ourselves in today. People are constantly wanting you to change, to bow down to their wants and needs. In this world, we are called to change to adapt. We are called to compromise. But how do we know when to do so? How do we know when to choose to dance and when to choose to burn? That's what the three amigos are facing today. Either puppet dance the king's song or die. What are they going to do? It's time for them to face the music. So the royal orchestra, they come out, they bring their harps and their lyre, their pipes, and they come out and they begin to play. And King Nebuchadnezzar is feeling really good. He's feeling powerful. He's feeling like he's in control. And so he puts his arms crossed and he watches. And they begin to play. They begin to play. And when the song plays, the three amigos, to his surprise and his chagrin, they get even more still. And they smile a little bit, even more upright. And still, feet planted firm. And when the song finishes, they look at the king and they say, "Dance or burn, you say? But king, you leave us no choice. We are men of principle. We are men of God. So you can play whatever dang music you want. But hear me now, I will not dance to your pagan beat. I dance to the beat of an awesome God, a God of deliverance, a God who has the power to save me from you and your little furnace. Now, I may choose to read your books, and I may choose to eat your food, but I will never, ever bow down to your God. I will never be your dancing puppet. For I will never bow down to something that I do not believe in, so go ahead, play your music, and sit back and watch as I gladly dance into those flames. Because you know what? Even if God doesn't save me, I would rather die dancing my beat than to be something I'm not. Dance or burn, you say? I hear cooked goose is good this time of year. Cue up the orchestra, show me the fire, let's dance. The only thing redder than the furnace that day was King Nebuchadnezzar's face. He was so mad. You see, that's how it is in our lives. The moment that you refuse to back down, the moment you refuse to give into the pressure, the heat gets turned up on you. They start to turn it up. You see, when you stand for what you believe in, it causes friction. And if you've ever had an Indian arm rub, then you know it burns. At the very hint of resistance, you get threatened sevenfold with blazing ultimatums in your life and fiery consequences dangled above you. Dance or burn, what's it going to be? It's time for those three amigos to face the music. The king, he's mad, and he orders his soldiers, he says, that's it, throw them into the fire, throw them in. And just to kind of give you an idea of how hot it was, as soon as the soldiers get close enough to throw them, they themselves get burned right up. Like Shiska Babylonians, burned right up. It's funny, right? So Nebuchadnezzar, as he watches this blaze, he grows brighter. He kind of sears in, feeling satisfied. He has a gritty squint, and he has this satisfied smirk on his face. But his joyful smoldering doesn't last long. Suddenly, as he begins to watch the flames, his eyes, they get bigger, and his eyebrows begin to raise. He's like, what's going on? What are their bodies doing? At first, he thought they were just flailing around as they burn, but no. Whoa, wait a minute. What's happening? What are their bodies doing? Wait. What is that? It couldn't be. Is that dancing? Are they dancing in the fire? How could this be? Even my gold statue burns in fire. And he watches, and they dance, and he watches, and they dance, and then his eyes get even bigger, and his jaw drops, and he says to the old soldiers, hey, tell me again, how many did we throw in there? How many? And they said 3. Then how could it be that I see a 4th man dancing in the flames with him? How could that be? Who is that 4th man on fire? For he looks like a son of God. Get them out of there now. There's lessons here. You see, the lesson that you can take from the three amigos. You see, every day we are faced with dance or burn situations in your life. Times when people are trying to control you, distort you, and change you. You see, like the exiles in Babylon, we are caught in that middle place, faced with that same dilemma. God called them to put down roots, to settle, and to change, but exactly what and how much should they? We are caught there. You see, in our lives, we know that God calls us to be creatures of newness. I mean, we know that. He calls every person in here to adapt. He calls you to change, and He calls you to compromise in your relationships and in the situations in your life. In fact, it's the only way that you can actually keep those relationships. It's the only way that you can grow as people. I mean, we can't be rigid. We get that. We can't be rigid, unchanging beings because that is not in the spirit in which God created us. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave the exiles? Do we dance or do we burn? What's it going to be? You know, right now, I know you are feeling that heat from someone. Someone who is asking you to change. And if you don't know if you should or not, when you think about this, I want you to remember this story as you come to that place of decision. You see, the three amigos had to ask themselves, would this be a change that is good for me? Is this a change that holds true to my core beliefs? Does this violate my principles? And more importantly, will this bring me closer to God? You see, they had to decide if what they were being asked to do was a surface change or a core change. You know, they had to put the potential changes in categories. Babylonian books, food and wine and culture. Okay, I can do that. But there has to be a category in our lives that we are unwilling to compromise with. You see, whatever dance or burn situation that you are feeling in your heart right now and in your life, whatever it is, you need to ask yourself these same questions. What are you giving up in order to make this change? What are you giving up? Does it compromise who you are as a person? Does it compromise who you are as a child of God? And will it bring you closer to Him? You see, sometimes we need to throw aside those fiery consequences and decide first based on that God column. If you decide to bow, will it violate the principles of your faith? Will it take away your dignity? Will you lose your integrity? Will it stain your character if you do? Will it stain your character if you don't? What about your morality and your virtue? And don't kid yourself on that one. We're really good at that sometimes. Will this cause you to lose self-respect? And my favorite question that I ask myself whenever I get these dance or burn situations is this. If I do this today, will I need forgiveness tomorrow? For someone involved. Be it to others, myself, or God. What I've learned in my life is that every time I stepped away from my own identity, I always lost my way. I always ended up burning myself in the end anyway. That anytime anyone wants you to change who you are in order to be accepted or loved, it will always go wrong if it is a core change and violates your principles, and you will always end up miserable as somebody you are not. Work, personal, school, or family, or otherwise. One of the things, that I love about the story is that when King Nebuchadnezzar, when he pulled the three amigos from the fire, he then decreed to all the people. He says, oh my gosh, this is astounding. What an awesome God this is. Nobody shall disrespect the God of these three. Nobody. You see, when you stand up and display the kind of courage it takes to do what's right, people can see the principles of God burning in you. They can see it, and they can't help but respect you, even if they don't agree with you. And that rings true. Sometimes you're fighting with your families. There's acceptance issues. And what you are called to do is to stand your ground. Refuse to dance to your beat, but be a man and woman of God. Be a child of God who stands up and says, I am about grace, that I love him no matter what you say, that I can stand firm and true because what you say has no effect on my relationship with my God. But I love you and I forgive you. Maybe one day we can dance together. But people can see those principles of God burning in you. Now look, I know this is hard for you. I know it's difficult for you. And I don't pretend to stand up here and have all the answers. I haven't even got my own life figured out. But I promise to pray with you. I promise to pray with you through the night about this dance or burn situation that you are wrestling with. I ask that God be with you and that you have the courage to stand up should you decide and need to. And it's not always easy. It is not always easy because the fire is real. The consequences are true. But the good news of the word today is that we serve a God who is on fire. That when you choose to be true to God, he's going to choose to be true to you. That when you walk in that consequential fire, for he will be with you. That even though you may face the heat of the world upon you, all you will feel is God's coolness, the coolness of God's peace, because you is incombustible, baby, when God is on your side. He is that fourth man on fire. That's who he is. He is that fourth man willing to risk the heat with you. That fourth man willing to dance into the fire in your name. In your name. You see, again, this Advent, when we speak about hope, and it's something we have not yet achieved, we know that in his life, that him dancing in the fire was a sign that the hope is real. It's a sign that whatever situation you are going on, if your choices feel like the three amigos that day, if it feels like your choices are impossible and it doesn't feel like a choice at all, you need to remember that God is with you there. That God is a God of hope. That hope can never burn up in any furnace anyone can throw at you. It is alive and it is protecting you. It is your first line of defense. Jesus is that fourth man on fire. He dared the flames of the cross to save you and me from the heat of this life. So dance or burn? What's going to be?